to go through Fort Bliss, Texas. And you show up, and there's going to be like a couple hundred other soldiers who are deploying, and everyone there is identified by a number. So I think I was like number 1,772, something like that. So they call attendance at every formation, and you're known by number. There's a lot of up and wait. CIF Central Issue Facility. Your size and issued TRACUs, which are like ACUs, but a little bit of yellow tinge to them, and they're fire retardant. I thought they were more comfortable, more like pajamas, but other people thought they weren't as nice. One key thing with when you get sized, and you get to actually give input into what size. So the bigger your pants, the more room you have in your pockets. But also things can fall out of your pockets, and I've only lost my wallet twice in my life. Both times were on my way to deployment, and it was just missing. It had fallen out of my pocket. So it's something to keep in mind. You might want to tie your wallet to your belt loop or something. Okay, next slide. Okay. So at CRC, you need to qualify with your weapon. If you have recently qualified before going to CRC, you're good to go. I hadn't qualified with the first point before getting there, and it's hot in Georgia, hot in Florida. So when you qualify here, you're not wearing IOT and all of that. I had always previously gotten like shot off an expert. So I thought going into it, I was going to have no problem, go up to the shooting range, shoot, and be good. But that was not the case. So at first trial, I failed, and then I really rested up. I ate lots of snacks. I always keep food with me. I'm like, okay. I had a guy next to me pointing out where the things were going to pop up, and I missed a bunch, but I didn't know if I was enough to qualify or not. So we all waited bit of time after that, and they call up like 6 names, and they call us all together and said, you 6 did not pass. You got to do it again. And you have to pass in order to get on that plane to go to Iraq. And so I said, excuse me, if I didn't pass this time, I'm not going to pass now. I'm even more tired. Like my shoulders couldn't hold up the IOTV to hold up the weapon. And they said, wait, what's your name? And I said, Sumoff. And they said, oh no, you're not on this list. You passed. And so that did not give me much confidence going in, but I was good to go. And so these pictures are actually from the shooting range in Kuwait. I didn't take pictures at the shooting range in Georgia. The flight we stopped in Germany. That was the plane we were on. We got right back on the same plane to take us into Kuwait. You arrive in Kuwait and you're there for like 5 days. You do trainings there. You sleep in these big tents. The guys didn't get any sleep because a lot of them snored. And a lot more hurry up and wait. Yeah, next slide. And then from Kuwait, we flew into Iraq on the C-130. Next slide. And then we arrived at Cobb Adder. So I replaced Major Jen Hewitt, who I had no experience with prior to this deployment. But the person you replace in theater, you're going to be their favorite person. So you can start communicating with them as soon as you find out you're going, and ask as many questions as you want, and they're going to be happy to inform you and set you up for success. So by the time I arrived, she was there waiting for me right in front of that sign. And because I was there, she was able to go home to her family. So it's good to establish a relationship. Since then, we've never been stationed at the same place, but we've shared patients. You'll find a lot of overlap with people. You'll see the Army's a small place. So here's the map of Iraq. I honestly didn't know really where it fit in the world before I was told I was going there. Let's see. I don't think I have a pointer, but this shows some of the places. Kuwait's down here in the bottom.
These are actually pictures I got off the internet before I went. I wanted to see where I was going to be. And these are satellite pictures. It really was that brown. Where it's green, that's from being close to the Euphrates River. But it was a very dry brown place. And you can kind of see that rectangle in there. Let's see. That was the adder, and that's the airstrip that was kind of in the center. And then even more zoomed in, also pictures I got off the internet. And then I added the labels to them. So this is the combat support, the cost, and then it's the cash, or my maybe a top line. So living areas, they call them LAs. I was in LA 8, and they're kind of like little neighborhoods. So when I arrived, we knew we were leaving Iraq sometime in the near future, and the numbers had gone down. So even though I was a 3 young captain, I was able to live in a nice neighborhood that had been kind of set up more for their senior officers. We thought it was nice, but then the boardwalk, it was even nicer. And then this next picture has images of my shoe. So I actually had my own bathroom in my container that my own bathroom, had it really nice. I knew I had it really nice. This last deployment, I went as a lieutenant colonel, and nearest bathroom was this trailer, probably about a 4 mile away. So there were porta potties that were closer, but in the middle of the night, we were not going to do. I can give a whole nother talk on what to do about that in situations in the middle of the night. So the work setup. So the cost is this freestanding building. Freestanding building in the front, and then the cache is in the background. And so I was assigned to the cache, but they were my command. It was where I saw the hospitalized and ER patients. That's where they actually had running water, pharmacy, lab. But my clinic was in the cost. And so those clinic hours went 1,700 Monday through Friday. We had morning report with the cache every morning at 7:30 and then 7 o'clock on Thursday. So as psychiatrist, I was working probably longer hours than any of the other docs and a lot of the other, definitely all the other medical people, but definitely not as hard as the war fighters. So as hard as I felt like I had it, lots of people out there, lots of the soldiers had it way, way worse. And although I was working long hours, but I'm pretty safe. And so I really didn't have it bad. And surgeons almost had it the worst because they were not operating, they were not working, they were going straight, like they were bored. And that wasn't my deal. So although I was working really long hours, it wasn't bad. So the cost. So the 212 CSC was dispersed all throughout Iraq, but their headquarters were with us at Cobb Adder. So the picture, the bigger picture, is a subset of the cost that was there at Cobb Adder. And then those that are in the bottom picture were scattered, that aren't in the top picture were scattered throughout Iraq.
Bacon in there?
Yes. So he was assigned, so he was Lieutenant Colonel Bacon, and he was faculty in the residency, you know, as resident. So I knew when I went to Iraq, Colonel Bacon was going to be there. He got there maybe a month or so before I got there. In his office, he's part of the CSC, so I was right across from mine, so I wasn't there by then. So that was kind of interesting. Any other questions? So these are pictures of the staff. Very
far your right corner is, Dan Steigerwald, and he was major at the time. He was actually in residency 2 years before me, or ahead of me, and he showed up for like a week, as he was traveling through. So it was one day I came into work and there he was, and he joined our clinic for like a week or so, on his way through. And then a lot of the other staff, like the, psychiatrist, we crossed paths in later years, you know, when they come very well to the leader. These are just pictures of headquarters staff. This is my office. It was small and compact, but it was very efficient, and it was fine. Patients didn't have any complaints. The table that was there was set up by Major Hewitt, and we kind of had just like giveaways, candy and little toys. The patients really seemed to appreciate that, and so I tried to continue that practice. Now, Colonel Bacon's office is across the hall, with our Angela, and he didn't actually have that particular chair in the corner, but he had a chair very, very similar to that. And that was the chair his patients sat in. You might see on the, in front of, his, computer screen is a bread maker. He had a bread maker in his office, and his church would send him boxes of, bread mix. And he needed a loaf of fresh bread every day, and so that was very well received, by the staff and any others who were able to, partake in that. The CSC had lots of mandatory events. They had lots of looking out, and they had mandatory movie night. For one of the movie nights, I showed up at the time I was supposed to be there, and the commander wasn't there, and, I was really hungry, so I ran across to the grab and go, get some food to bring back, and, I showed up, the commander was there, doing the push-ups, so we didn't do that. So, he was, although he was the commander of the class, of the 212 class, he, didn't have behavioral health background, he was a helicopter pilot, and very frustrated that he was in that position. So a lot of people, get placed into a position in the military that they might not necessarily want. They were really big on ceremonies, and so we had reenlistment ceremonies, promotion ceremonies, point presentations, and Arkham medals. And that was, you get called out of appointments. They would say, okay, we're gonna do a ceremony, and then patients have to come out. We did the ceremonies. And this was, I was gifted this coin, and I thought that was. So the CSD, they had an endpoint. And these points, the commanders pay for, typically, it's out of their own personal budget. So athletics and PT with the cost, they would do these different events. My recommendation, partake. You want to definitely be part of the team. And I think you almost get more credit if you're like not that good. Like, I was horrible at volleyball, but I showed up. And, I think, you know, I got appreciation for doing that. The building we were in was quirky, the stairs were super uneven. So that was the cost, now the cash. So I was actually assigned to the cash, but because behavioral health is assigned to the. It was enclosed in these T-walls, and it was all made up of, different pillars. These are pictures of the inside of the hospital. You can see the OR has those like, those doors that just swing open and close, and that was the barrier between the hallway of the hospital and going into the main OR, so it really wasn't all that clean. And we definitely saw some infections, or any, we saw some infections from surgeries that had happened with docs that were there before. So you can see how, modernize the ICU is, and that was just the extent, of what we had. The morning reports were pretty formal, at least up until November 30th. So I deployed in August and things were pretty, typical until the end of November when, we really started moving the country. So more on that. At morning report, each specialty would announce the number of cases they saw the day before, but morning behavior health, Dr. Hewitt said, when you say smiles, and we can report any number. And so that's something I would recommend actually reporting the actual numbers. Or that was known as smoke. And so this was outside of my shoe. One day I showed up and there was this smiley face on the doormat. And then, I left it there. And a day or so later, there's this frown face. So then, as a psychiatrist, I had to figure out who left the frown and why. Which I did. So this is a Facebook posting. So this was after I graduated residency and Facebook was really big, and it's like 11 years ago. But this was something someone had posted, was there, in our unit. So after my short time in theater, I had come to the conclusion that our leadership did not give a damn about us. I mean, so sick of people only looking out for themselves and trying to find that out. And the reason I posted here is because this is a sentiment that was felt by many, and something we'll deal with. So, talking about morale, morale busters were, those who were there who were not doing the job that they had trained to do. And so that was pretty prevalent. The uncertainty of constantly changing information regarding length of time and location in theater. And that's pretty common even, when deployment, times are seemingly more straightforward. 15-6 investigation, that's when a service member is assigned to do an investigation. And, usually it's because something bad happened. And these are people who are really trained to do the investigations and it feels like hardship and, but typically they put their full effort into it and, ideally they hope that their recommendations will be followed. But when those aren't followed, that's where the morale buster. But there are also morale boosters. So we did have commands that were there that set positive examples and enforced the rules. And I feel as though the soldiers really appreciated when it happened. Having something to look forward to. So daily, I met with the other doctors and we'd walk over to dinner and eat dinner together. So that was really nice. And then if you have something to look forward to more in the long term, such as a day that something good should happen, and an event or redeployment, just going home, that's helpful. Candy, I had people send me candy in gift packages, and care packages, and I got to learn what a lot of people's favorite candy was. And when we like bring a bag of candy around and deliver, that is really nice too, just, you know. And then the fresh bread. They did have shopping and, on my other deployment, they have shopping on the camp. So this was the bottom picture. There was this area that was kind of in between on base and off base where you could go and buy different things. And I actually bought or bought, sent it home, and that's the local thing I was doing. I left this picture in here, even though it's pretty outdated as far as the communication I had, going on. At the time, we thought the communication was great because we were able to provide pretty extensive internet and, that the Skype was the technology. On this last deployment, I just changed my cell phone service before I went to T-Mobile and I FaceTimed. So I recommend communicating with the person who's going to be replacing, or somebody else who's there. You know, with what technology is available. Because because I had done that and that means I can say it's sustainable and keep it so. Electricity adapters, we'll probably need them, just something to think about. And it was super hot there in the summer. This is a picture I had of the monitor. I don't think it was actually 127.8 degrees Fahrenheit when I took this picture, but it was hot. So the first appointment, we had to wear uniforms at all times, 24/7. We weren't allowed to wear any civilian clothes. I sent all my civilian clothes home from CRC just so that we could carry, so I could carry as little as I needed to in the computer. The second appointment was to wear civilian clothes when we weren't on duty. That was until the last month, and he said, okay, we'll switch you to uniform, which included PTs, but those are unit, we just weren't prepared to have enough PT clothes to be, in just the Army PT clothes, when we weren't in the practice. So, something to think about, they can change the uniform, rules at any time, so you might want to have as many PTs as you can. Food, I actually was pretty impressed with the food on both deployments. I was lucky, definitely on the second deployment, there were other locations that basically they just ate MREs the whole time. So up until the last month, we had we actually had 2 defects, and then some restaurants. The last month, we did just have MREs. And then, whatever food we had stocked, I hope before everyone else could go. This is a picture of the Jennifer, this is the box, and, I included everyone's rank on here to kind of demonstrate, I was the most junior and also the only female, but they were a big group of guys, and I definitely felt like they treated me like a little sister, for all of them. And actually, the guy who has his hand on his shoulder, he turned out was my cousin who made that question. So the meals in the defect, every Thursday for lunch, the cost would go to the further dining facility, which we thought was really nice. They had metal silverware and hard plastic plates and some other food options that they didn't have at the other place. And then the other picture, the picture of. So I had said that you should have something to look forward to, and I was able to coordinate the Marine Corps Marathon forward. And so we set that up to be the same day as the actual Marine Corps Marathon here, NCC. And that's just something I did on the second appointment too. On this first appointment, the man really wanted to have like a ton of support. And the cardiologist was like, he came from Boston. Someone always dies in Boston Marathon each year. So we need to have the defibrillator right there with everybody at all times. And I tried to explain to him there's like thousands of people who aren't all in shape. We're going to have something like 5 runners and we'd be fine. But we had that defibrillator there. So it required a lot of support. And then here's the race that started super early in the morning. The night before we thought we were going to have to cancel it, there was a windstorm or a sandstorm. And it just wasn't safe at that time to be outside running. Fortunately, that had cleared up. And this year, the year that we did that, we actually had better weather. And they did in DC, their water froze at the water station. But we had relatively cool, but warm enough that water was good. And then these are those of us who finished and some others who was helped. And then the Reaper Marathon had sent us that banner, and I have that banner that hangs in the basement. And they also sent, the marathon track. It was a lot of fun. And then, that night, we had barbecue. And then later that night, I was called, Uber patient who was found passed out from nothing. It was a very. Thanksgiving, so this was our big Thanksgiving meal. You might say Thanksgiving is not on Sunday, and that is true, but this was the last meal they served in the week back. So they went all out. They had actually saved some desserts. Desserts weren't served every night the week, leading up to this, which is not typical there, but the folks really went all out, and we had this great Thanksgiving dinner. We had the mandatory one with the pot, and then I went again like 2 hours later with my dinner friends. And then, this was the actual Thanksgiving, on Thursday with the cost, and people had, it was kind of potluck, and we all had saved some special things and brought it in. And then the following day, the cost left, but, I remained behind with with those that were left from. And so the gym was a really big thing. So here are different pictures of the gym. You can see the second one from the right on the bottom. It's closed. The doors are closed and there's a small padlock on it. So after that second meal on the Sunday Thanksgiving, as we went to the gym, we showed up, and it was padlock closed. Everyone was clearing out, and I guess there was not enough gym staff. And I thought, oh no, that's everyone's sanity in the gym. If you take that away from the few people that are using that to pull themselves together, I don't know how I'm going to be able to see all the patients. So I was able to convince them to reopen the gym, and it just wasn't staffed. This is a picture of me doing the first pull-up I've ever done. That was one of my goals when I got there. And I did a lot of different exercises, and I knew I was getting really close, and I had a friend there holding the camera in case I was actually able to do it, and it felt amazing. And then all these other workout stuff, I didn't do all of those, but those were things that other people were doing. I did do the P90X, I think. But I didn't do all of it. I thought the skies there were beautiful, and I think that's in part to the ground is so quickly, but it was dry until it wasn't. So when the rainy season started, which was in the fall, when it would rain, everything just turned to mud. I have a whole bunch of pictures of just pictures. And they were all of this. Care packages. So care packages were really nice to receive. And you may want to think about sending care packages. There was a big base, and there were buses and bus stops. The bunkers, there were bunkers everywhere. Many of my patients would go in bunkers to cry. A lot of them had roommates. And there were old weapon bunkers in the base. Inside, I took a picture of one that says, "Announce yourself or risk being shot." There are a lot of different wild animals, including jackals on the base. And I thought if I ever had to use my weapon, it would most likely be protecting myself against one of the jackals.
A centipede? Massive.
No, it's a lizard.
Next to them? No.
No, that's a ring, metal ring.
Ah, okay.
Carrying vehicles and aircraft, including a big drone we had there. And then these are products we had in the big bag, a wandering. So on the first deployment, I had two options for laundry. You could bring it in and there's a laundry service that we do it for free, or you could do your own laundry, in machines in the trailer. Second deployment, similar, except if you had your laundry done, you had to pay a something for that. So the big lesson here is almost anyone has potential to become a patient, and you also have potential to see your laundry. So, probably more sensitive for females, but something to keep in mind. This is where you get your drinking water. They can have water pumps everywhere. They're very frequent. You get bottles of water. Most people have refrigerators in their living space. Generators were loud and stinky. There was pretty much a pervasive smell of human waste and building sand. When I showed up for the second deployment, and went back that community, the mosque that was on the base. And then right off base was a great zero out of bird. And that was originally, the bottom pictures, or the one on the inside, I got off the internet, but the others I actually was able to take myself. Is originally built in the 21st century BC. And they had been giving tours of the zero until I had arrived. And that's when they had stopped doing that, just because they were very down. We're running out of time. So after the 30th of November, almost everyone had cleared out. My command had pretty much the 47th cash command. Senior staff went to Kuwait. My company commander had gone home. He was able to eat Thanksgiving dinner with his family in Washington. So it felt a little abandoned. We were pretty much given to the 912 FST, and we just joined them unofficially. It was the psych tech. My psych tech for $50, myself and the ER physician were basically with them. And we moved into the hospital. No one was in shoes. We are all living in different hospital space. Room was the physical therapy office. And it was almost like summer camp. We were primarily only seeing emergency patients. I continued to see a few selected patients that remained behind, which was nice to have some focus in there. We had a shower trailer, one shower trailer, and so we did alternated hours of if it was open for meals or females. I indulged in marshmallows with cigars. I still indulge in marshmallows. Had a lot of patients that we saw. And so you can see at the end, it tapers down, and that's just because everyone is dealing with a country. I saw a total of 170 different individuals with 494 appointments. Percent of patients I saw 4 or more times were 28%, but the number of appointments for those patients were close to 60%. A lot of anger and irritability. So nothing, there's rare true psychiatry, like real pathologic stuff, but a lot of anger and irritability. One of the key things that I had to balance with the deployment was having boundaries versus isolation. And so applied in the gym and feedback at the cache and then on Facebook. Communication and documentation, command really, this was like what they were preaching, but they didn't communicate themselves necessarily, and so that was quite frustrating, but it is important, communication and documentation. And I'd recommend having a good, strong relationship with the pharmacist and knowing how much medication, the different medications, what the supply is, because that had become an issue. Things I've learned, command climate is a powerful force. It seemed as though the good soldiers with the bad commanders were ETF and different, going home, you're going to get out. Deployment sex really turned out well. Awareness from patients. Basically, I never heard good stories. if anyone had sex with the kid, unless their spouse was there. So there was a lot of waste with the deployment, especially as we cleared out of the country, we just started burning everything. And we threw away like $1 million worth of medications. Wish I would have, I left on there, brought an iPad, but however you get your music, you're gonna want to, or whatever you listen to, you're gonna want to be able to access the other things that you access at home. I can talk about any of these things at a later time. But you're gonna want to bring as little with you as you can. They'll issue you 4 duffel bags from people, like take as little as they need to, so they can condense them into 2 or 3 bags, which is great. I recommend you do that, but stuff up those extra bags and bring them in with you, so that you can bring them, you can fill them up with whatever you require and go out. Take lots of pictures, and then take before and after pictures if you have, it seems like a lot of people, it was a great opportunity for them to get into shape. I did that on my first deployment, and then I kind of remained in shape, so my second deployment and before and after pictures, but I didn't even bother. I was a chubby. There are a lot of positive aspects of deployment, but you gotta keep in mind this was very positive deployment. And I really felt it was a great opportunity to do what I had planned to do for the prior 8 years. And to use this in residency, and I was prepared from the psychiatrist standpoint. And that was nice. I learned a lot about the Army and Army culture. For me, there were minimal traumatic experiences. And it was actually a nice escape from reality. And it was nice, the friendships. So at the end, we knew that we could be told to go at any moment. My psych tech, Sergeant Gonzalez, and Dr. Captain Riddle, the ER doc, we were told, okay, your flight's leaving in an hour. Grab your bags and go. And that was, I think that like the 14th of December. We were back at CRC on the 16th of December, and then we were unable to turn in our gear to CIF that day or the next day. We were having a Christmas party that afternoon, so they had closed down and that day. But we're able to turn it in. I scheduled my own flight back in order to fly out as soon as I could. There may be consequences of doing that if that's not what you're supposed to do. And then these are just random pictures. And then any questions? Yes.
Was there a chaplain or something like that?
Yes. So, and the chaplain was located with us. I did not have a great relationship with the chaplain. I was very motivated on the second deployment. I was gonna have a good relationship with the chaplain. And so on my second deployment, I replaced Vince Capaldi. And I don't know if you all know Vince Capaldi, but he's a religious guy. And he warned me before I told him I'm gonna have a good relationship with the chaplain. He said, oh, you don't know this chaplain. I'm like, no, I can do it. I'm gonna have a good relationship. But that chaplain was not ideal chaplain. And that, despite my best efforts, we did not have a positive relationship. And our offices were right next to each other. Most chaplains, I think, are good, but there are some that aren't, and actually, so anyway, I have whole stories about it.
What happened with the first chaplain?
So the first chaplain, like, I think that's best for me. Any other questions? I do recommend you have a good relationship with the chaplain. And I think more chaplains, you probably can have a very good relationship.
I was curious how much you were able to impact the relationship between command and soldiers, since it sounds like a lot of the patients you had describe a toxic relationship with. As you were a captain at the time, you said.
Yes.
How were you able to make much of a change in that aspect at all?
Well, not necessarily in, like their whole command mindset, but I did employ my family therapy skills, and it actually all command did and with the patient and we kind of do what was very similar to family therapy. And, I think it was beneficial on, like each patient level. You're welcome.
So we're at time,
Yes,
but I feel like your last comment was worth it, family
therapy
therapy.
with
Right.
command.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so next time when we have moving report, I want to take about maybe 5-10 minutes and talk about what our conflict might look like. If I'm in long enough and you are just moving in long enough. What it's gonna look like when you don't have that kind of developed theater of operation, right? Because you've got civilian contractors that are doing your laundry and so on. What happens when you're not able to medevac the patients because if you fly, the Russians are gonna, so, potentially not, lack of air superiority. And so what does deployment operations look like, the counterinsurgency, where we have air superiority versus the large scale combat operations that we are training us for, right? Including myself, all of us are getting ready for the fight with Russians or the Chinese or the North Koreans, maybe a few others out there. So we can discuss that, but I think reflect on that, so try to remember this. I think doing the tribal ritual, don't be offended by the word used, tribe, but these tribal rituals that, we do telling stories, I think that's very powerful, because it helps us experience what you experience. And it gives us some perspective in terms of where we might end up, and think about what if you were Dr. Suma, what sort of things might you have had to know in order to operate. So if you're an engineer and you're asked to develop a car, you're gonna say what kind of car, right? So what kind of psychiatrist do you want to be if we're fighting the Russians or the Chinese, for example? What are the capabilities that we need? And I think that's something that we all need to ask ourselves. Am I able to do family therapy that he had to do in order to help make or advocate for that soldier with their chain of command? Am I able to intervene with the sexual relationships that people may have, or couple relationships, that sort of thing? So I think that's how I reflect on, do I know these things, and am I going to be able to pull my weight if I'm asked to go? And so thank you so much for walking here in the rain and to do this in your fancy uniform. I'm so grateful for you to share your story with me. I think that stuff like this is, stuff of legacy. So thank you for your service as well and your sacrifice.
I would say with in terms of Colonel Simon's education, even though we were in different locations, and a lot of what she said about her, I mean, I very much related to and brought back memories and experiences from time that was very relatable. So I think it's just translate between families and different locations, such as Spain. So I think it gives you a really realistic perspective. Differences. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.